All right, folks. Hey, it's October 31st. It is Halloween. And guess who we've got riding in the back of the limo out there in
And I'm dressed up as the third Najarian brother right now. I see with the shades
the
and everything.
shades,
Although,
but too much hair, Anthony. Too much
yeah,
hair.
too much hair, but no height. That was the best thing about being on TV with you guys. It was the only place in America where I could look as tall as the two of you.
Oh,
That's because they used to let me sit on phone books over at CNBC.
not true. All he's got to do is sit on his wallet, folks, and he's taller than
Oh
anybody in the
God.
room. That's Anthony Scaramucci, folks, Skybridge Capital. Anthony, of course, is a longtime friend, great guy, and he is basically a multi-published author. His most recent book is coming out, just hitting the shelves today. You'll be lucky if you can find it because sold out on Amazon, pre-orders and everything sold out on Amazon. It's called Hopping Over the Rabbit Hole, basically about how entrepreneurs turn lemons into lemonade, sort of thing, isn't it,
Yeah,
Anthony?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. When we were coming up with a title for the book, I was thinking about how I was heading down the rabbit hole, John, in 2009, and then one of my colleagues said, "No, we didn't really head down. We hopped over it." I said, "That's the title for the book." And you know this because you're an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs have to deal with the uncertainty of outcome and they have to deal with a tremendous amount of risk. But the third thing they deal with, which we both know, is that a lot of our success is providential. It's but for the grace of God, you make a left turn or a right turn, you could end up in a ditch. And so I really tried to write the book, speaking to that truth to power, speaking to that relevancy. I don't like reading these sanitized magazine cover stories about the perfect entrepreneur who's done everything right and he's the Tony Stark in the Iron Man 17 movie.
Mm-hmm.
You and I both know that these things are fraught with risk, pain, social anxiety, self consciousness. Uh, they elicit all of those feelings in the book, telling people how we mapped our way from a $400 million asset manager to a $200 million asset manager on our way to a $12.3 billion asset manager. So a lot of zigs and zags, John.
Yeah, well, folks, um, again, one of the best books I read this year, Anthony, was Shoe Dog by Phil Knight.
Sure. It's
And
great.
I put your book right up there with that because
Well,
it's hopping over the rabbit hole, folks. Is again, you've got Anthony says it right there in the book. If you have an entrepreneur that is batting 150, he's in the Hall of Fame. You're
yeah,
not in the Hall
exactly.
of Fame in baseball batting 150. You probably never made it up to the majors. But in being an entrepreneur, in particular in private equities, you've got so many lines in the water that if one of them hits and it's a 50x or 100x, that's all you got to have,
Exactly
right?
right. 100%. I mean, and just on Shoe Dog, I thought that book was fantastic. I mean, he also what I love about Phil Knight, and this is something I tell everybody. We have to read. I left Michael Milken's office about a month ago, feeling very insecure and inadequate because Michael told me that he reads 7 to 8 hours a day,
Oh,
and he told me he's 3 to 4 hours behind Warren Buffett. And so I walked out of there with my pangs of inadequacy. We have to read, and it'll accelerate our learning. And to learn from people like Phil Knight or Mike Milken or Howard Schultz, Warren Buffett, these legendary thinkers, why not avail ourselves to them? Mark Twain said, "We're no different from people that can't read if we decide that we can read, but we decide not to." And so we gotta read all the time, John.
true. It's a gift, Anthony. And hats off to you for making not only a very interesting book, but a very readable book. So it's not some textbook, folks. It's something you can pick up and read and get a lot out of it. Just like I say, just like Shoe Dog, you're getting it not necessarily warts and all, but you're seeing the risks that Phil Knight took, the risks that Anthony Scaramucci took with this SALT, this strategic conference that you started back in '09, Anthony. You basically put it all on the line to make that happen, right?
Yeah, listen, I at the time it was touch and go. I mean, we were talking about it the other day. It's 2,200 people now. It's some of the higher profile personalities in politics, business, our industry,
Yep.
the entertainment industry. But back then it was 300 people. Uh, it was Milken and General Wes Clark
Mm-hmm.
and Dick Gephardt. Those were my three speakers. And at that time, we thought we were going out of business. And so we were throwing the bomb. I start the book with Steve Wynn's introduction of Michael Milken, where he turns to me and says, "Hey, I'd like to thank my good friend Andy." And I'm like looking around saying, "Is he talking to me?" And people go, "Yeah, he's talking to you." Okay. And then he pounded on me by saying, "So Andrew, thank you." And he's waving over at me and I'm waving back to him. And then the next morning, John, I'm like, does anybody know any middle class Italian women in the 1960s naming the kid Andrew? You know, but I start the book with that because you have to understand your relative lack of importance in civilization. You know, we all find ourselves to be very self-important, and of course, we're at the center of our own world. But the truth of the matter is, you get the most enjoyment out of life when you realize that you're just another insignificant cog in the wheel. And so, Churchill had the best line ever, which I'll share with everybody.
Sure.
He said, "You know, we're all worms. We're all worms." He goes, "However, I choose to be a glowworm." And so it's just a point about, we're all doing the best we can to make a dent on the universe, but when Steve Wynn is calling you Andy or Andrew, you got to take it in stride, you know.
Yep. Well,
So
and I've always seen you do that, Anthony. And, knock on wood, folks, I've known Anthony since probably '07, maybe
yeah,
something like
oh
that.
seven, yeah, oh seven.
And, huge success at Newberger Berman, Lehman Brothers, and a lot of good luck along the way as well, Anthony. And
No
you
question.
deserve all of
But I'll say something about you and your brother, which
it.
I want to share with people. When I joined the Fast Money panel, you guys were so welcoming and you were so awesome in terms of just being friends, and you understand, maybe it's from the sports that you played or just the way you grew up, you understand that concept of team, and not to be cliche, but team, we all achieve more together. Everyone achieves more. TEAM. And you guys get that better than anybody. And I got to tell you, I always tell my friends this about you guys, and I tell my staff, share and pass the ball and help the people around you. There's plenty of success out there for everybody. There's no need to hit each other with the whomper stomper gopher bat, you know.
Yeah.
And you guys were great to me, and I'll always remember that and appreciate it and think of it fondly.
Oh, thank you, Anthony. Well, likewise with all of your generous time that you've given us time and time again, just like this interview. But, folks, by the way, one of the many other things that Anthony does is he revived Wall Street Week. It's every week on Fox News now, and it's also streaming online. You can pull up, podcasts of previous episodes and see some of the greatest interviews in finance on Anthony's show. And he owns that show. Basically, you bought it from Maryland Public Television, I think, right?
I did. It's an interesting story because we brought it back as an infomercial, so you have to think about that. I had never hosted a show before, and since CNBC didn't want it, and I didn't know the people at Fox, I went out and bought the airtime, and I was sandwiched in between like a Proactive acne commercial and Jane Seymour skin products, and so we did that for 38 straight episodes, and then the executive team over at Fox Business and Fox News took the show, uh, and so it's been in revitalization mode for the last 2 years. And listen, we're very very happy with the results so far. And I will say this: we're always looking for suggestions and ideas. So people listening to this interview, you can email me at ascaramucci@skybridgecapital.com if you have ideas for the show or guests. We're big thinkers. We'll reach out to anybody and everybody. try to get him on the show.
How about that, folks? A Scaramucci at skybridgecapital.com.
.com. Yep.
Fantastic. Just a great way to connect with Anthony as well. Um, what's the scariest thing you've seen so far? Since it's Halloween today, Anthony, what's the scariest thing you've seen?
Well, the scariest thing for me in business was when my CFO told me that we were in a negative equity position, and that I needed to put money into the holding company to meet payroll. And this was March of 2009.
Right.
And I was watching our assets go from $400 million under management to 200. So we'd lost 22% in 2008. And then we had redemption notices of about 35% of the capital. So literally 57% of our capital was disappearing, and I had to make payroll. And so that was the scariest thing for me, by a big factor. And the truth is, like every entrepreneur, you're staring at the abyss and you have to make a decision about your survivability, or your attempt at least to survive. And so, what I would tell you is that for me, John, and I know you can appreciate this, it's one part humility
Mm-hmm.
and it's one part humiliation, because when you're at the brink, you do feel humiliated. There's no question about it. And you have to, as an entrepreneur, you have to recognize that that can be part of the process. We glamorize these things in magazines, and we sometimes can glamorize them on television, but there is a jagged movement to the top. It doesn't move in a straight line, and it doesn't move at a 45-degree angle.
True. Well, Anthony, I know today, again, October 31st, we had Peter Thiel, rather.
Yeah.
Peter Thiel was on, and he is a Trump backer, as are you. You
Yes.
are one of Mr. Trump's advisors. And I think one of the things that Mark Zuckerberg actually did right, other than I think he runs Facebook tremendously well, but I
Yeah.
don't agree with all of his politics. However, one thing that I thought he really did well, Anthony, was he told people, look, Peter Thiel's on our board. I respect the heck out of him. You got to listen to people that have opinions other than yours. It can't just be one line and it's on the right side or it's on the left side. And I thought Zuckerberg was exactly right about that, because this is a really smart guy, this Peter Thiel.
Well, listen, I thought his interview today was refreshing in terms of its honesty and his analytical capability. And what I would say about Mark Zuckerberg is there were 3 or 4 times where he could have sold Facebook for a fraction of what it's worth today. And that would have been a very big mistake for them, because look at what he's been able to create. And so I give him a huge amount of credit for being this adaptive CEO, and someone that has great capability of seeing things for the long distance. One thing I will say, that I don't like about our current political environment, John, is the sanctimony and righteousness on both sides. So hopefully more people like Mark Zuckerberg will be listened to about accepting the ideas and the opinions of the opposing side without attacking them viciously, or turning them into a pariah, or suggesting that they're somehow demonic because they have a different political view than you do.
Yep, I agree. At times I'm guilty of it, Anthony, because you just kind of get caught up in the moment and you want to put out some hate on the other side. But, one thing that I think both of us agree on is that America's best days can still be in front of it.
No
But we
question.
have to address some very significant problems as far as immigration right now, and, bringing in and keeping some of the best and brightest that go through our universities. We have to be able to do that. But we need to create more opportunities for folks that don't have the high-end education as well.
There's no question about it. And I think that those voices, one thing about the 2016 electoral process is whether you see the galvanizing movement of Bernie Sanders or the extraordinary movement of Donald J. Trump, the American people are fed up with the status quo, and they're fed up with the failed political establishment on both sides. They do not like the direction of the way these people have thought. And at the end of the day, it was about losing touch with your customers. They march down to Washington, they feather their own nests, they're in this little love affair with each other inside that beltway. In the meantime, the average American is watching their disposable income drop. We're prosecuting wars all over the place that we don't win. The expenditures are into the many trillions of dollars. So we got wars going. We don't feel any safer. Disposable income is down. Opportunity is down. And so that's why you're seeing 65% of the people say, hey, the direction of the country is not the way I'd like it to be. And so it'll be an interesting election. Listen, I think it's going to be very close. I still predict a Donald Trump victory, not because of the way the mudslinging is gone, but just because of the good nose of the average American, recognizing that his policies will be the ones that promote growth, and he'll also try to redesign the national security footprint for the United States, which is badly broken right now, John. We're just not thinking about these things the way we need to, and we're losing a lot of respect around the world.
I agree. Well, Anthony, I know you have his ear, so hopefully a lot of the policies that end up getting enacted, if indeed Mr. Trump is elected, will be ones that have your fingerprints on them. You and Larry Kudlow and Mr. Moore. I think he's got some great advisors here.
Yeah, well, it's nice of you to say. I don't want to overstate my importance. I view myself as a low man on the totem pole with those guys, but I will say this about him for people that are listening to us that have never met him. I think you would be shocked at what he's really like as a guy versus how he's portrayed in the media, or sometimes how some of these sound bites are clipped on him. This is a very thoughtful, very engaging, very charming guy. And he has a management style that I think you'd be impressed with, John. He's a very positive, reinforcing sort of a coach. He's not one of those grab your face mask, twist your neck sort of guys. I've seen people make mistakes on this campaign. I've seen us fumble the ball a few times, and I've seen nothing but a demeanor of kindness and coolness from his personality. So I do think he's got a great temperament, and I do think he could an amazing president if he's given the opportunity. And we'll be working over the next 7-8 days as hard as we can to see if we can help him make that a reality.
Well, Anthony, you've been very generous with your time with Mr. Trump and his campaign, as well as with us here today. So again, I want to recap, folks. It's Anthony Scaramucci. His book is Hopping Over the Rabbit Hole. It's sold out on Amazon. Doesn't mean you can't order it. But Anthony says it's available at Books A Million and at Barnes & Noble. So you
Barnes & Noble, yeah. Amazon will be back in stock apparently later today for delivery on November the 8th, which is Election Day. But I hope you'll get a chance to read it. And listen, I enjoyed writing it. There's a lot of fun stories in there. And I think it is a little bit of a field guide for what it's really like to be an entrepreneur with all of the mishaps that you and I have experienced in our lives, John.
Exactly, because folks, it isn't as easy as it looks. As easy as Anthony makes it look.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of risk and a lot of ups and downs. But knock on wood, his graph has been going from the lower left to the upper right for a while, along with Skybridge and the ratings, of course, for your show, Wall Street Week, Anthony.
Oh, so I appreciate it, John. If you ever want to borrow my hair before I put it on eBay. Just let me know, brother, okay? I'll ship it out to Chicago for you, okay?
I'll come out there and pick it up. And if you're in New York, folks, by the way, Anthony's partners with, I think, Mr. Timberlake in a couple of ventures, Justin Timberlake, that is. Yeah. But one of his great and one of my favorite places to eat, Hunt and Fish Club, right on 44th Street between Avenue of the Americas and 7th, right there in Times Square. Great place to grab a steak.
It's a fantastic spot. And just for the trivia buffs, we did name it after John Gotti's social club in Bergen County. He had a mafia joint called the Bergen County Hunt and Fish Club, and so we spoofed that a little bit. We brought the Hunt and Fish Club into Manhattan. So we've had a lot of fun doing it. And John, you're the maitre d's' favorite customer, so we appreciate you showing up, man.
I'll be there a lot. So thanks, Anthony. Right. Have a great time trick-or-treating today.
Great.
And we'll make sure we spread the word about hopping over the rabbit hole.
Thanks, John. Great day to you too. Happy Halloween, everybody. Happy Halloween.